calculations.
Yeah.
And I was able to use the formulas, but I didn't quite understand how they got from one formula to the next.
Well, you are in luck, because
Okay.
that's, I mean, it's good to read ahead to prompt yourself, but that's what tonight's lecture is all about. So ask your questions as we go. So yeah, if you guys can, I think the way Jonathan's strategy, if you read ahead before lecture, that's the best way to do it. I know we all have busy lives and other things, but that would be my recommendation, is to actually do it that way. And then if you run into something that looks kind of weird, just blow over it, right? The whole idea is to kind of frame yourself with the topics, and then when I hit them here in class, it should make a lot more sense. So, and then that way it'll allow you to ask probably better questions, knowing what you didn't know your first pass, right? So that's a great strategy. Anybody else? All right, so yeah.
Possible to turn the AC on or up?
No, I don't think so.
How scary. I didn't leave it, I'm surprised.
If you just give it a good elbow, we can knock that cover off.
Yeah, I think this is the one. I don't think this one's doing anything. They just left it up because otherwise there'd be a hole in the wall. It's actually cranked down, so this is because I think that's the setting right there. So yeah, I think we're stuck with what we got. Sometimes during these hot days, it's hard for them to keep up. So yes, fan yourself, and I will probably break out into a sweat at some point as well. Anything else? Let's see, so I guess I'll wait on that, so I don't really need this thing. Since we had our hiccup, other than, yeah, I'll just test that when we come to break. All right, so yeah, I was usually going to prepare all this other stuff ready. So yes, today we talk about demand and elasticities. I can't remember if you guys got prepped at all on that on your MBA math, but in terms of thinking about some of that stuff. But we all need a good refresher, and it's good to have a really solid footing on this, because this is the thing that everything rests on. So if I go to the store and pay, I guess we've been using this gizmo. This thing costs $5.49, this little extension thing. What's it worth to me?
No, it's weird.
At least
$5.49? Wrong. Jonathan?
At least
At least that, right? And so that's the main thing that is kind of difficult to say, because we always we buy a price, well, what's it worth? Well, what's it cost? That's totally different, really, on what you value something at versus what the store has it priced at. The store has it priced to maximize what? Profit. So they're doing their own thing. Of course, they're keeping in mind that in order to maximize profits, they need to sell it to you, right? But they have to have a good understanding of people having different preferences. And as a part of maximizing profits, what is the proper price to set as they balance things out? So we're going to start off today with the law of demand. The law of demand. Anybody want to take a crack at the law of demand? Especially some of my former econ majors. But the law of demand, the demand curve. Law of demand.
I'll help someone out. I'll get off.
You'll help them out? Does that mean you're not brave enough to give a stab yourself?
Holding everything constant.
Holding everything constant. Okay, I like you starting off that way. That's cool.
Ceteris paribus.
Okay.
As the price increases.
You look like you're reading off Andres. You didn't pull something up, did you?
No.
Okay.
Okay, as price
I
increases.
saw you eyeballing your screen there. So.
Not this time.
As price increases, 20 to 1 decreases ceteris paribus.
Okay, good. Yeah, very good. So the ceteris paribus stuff, I'm glad you started off with that. The law of demand, I usually started off in class just to trip up my principal students, is that as the price of a good or service as the price of a good or service. I'll kind of use G and S or G or S. As the price of a good or service increases, the quantity demanded, we'll use a little Q subscript D, the quantity demanded does what? If price goes up, quantity demanded goes down, decreases. Now, is that always true? Price goes up and people buy less? Can you think of some exceptions? iPhone. So they raise the price and they sell more of them? Luke?
Cigarettes.
Cigarettes. Everybody's got to get their nick fit, and so raise the price from $5 a carton to $6 a carton, and they're going to sell more. That's to go against what we're saying here. Then you'd have to raise the price of cigs from $5 to $6, and you actually sell more.
Gas.
Can't stay the same even. It's got to be more to go against what we wrote here. Gas, you say?
But they don't want more of the same.
Okay, they want the same. Are you sure they want the same? If gas goes up like it has, we've all observed in the last year from, what was it, a year ago, $3.50 maybe or so? And so now we're at whatever, $4.50, about $1 higher. Are you guys consuming the exact same amount of gas? Or possibly doing more? Okay? So, this thing seems like, anybody else with some other challenges to the statement? Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
Maybe Super Bowl tickets.
Super Bowl tickets.
Super Bowl stadiums. They always get more expensive and they always sell out.
Okay. So they raised the price of Super Bowl tickets and they still sell more? You just kind of said they always sell out.
They normally add seats to different stadiums.
Okay, so for a particular stadium they add seats. But we're going to come back to stadium pricing actually in a future chapter because we do reach an upper bound, right, of the quantity. We only have 65,000 seats or whatever for stadium seating. Okay, other ones, Jonathan?
Sometimes price is an indication of value, so if your price is too low, people don't buy it because they might think it's cheaply made.
Okay, so, but if you decrease price, then you're going to sell a lot less given what you just said, right? Because they think it's cheap and it's like, I don't want to buy it. So that still seems to follow the law of demand, right? Or no, you're saying it falls. Decrease price too much and you won't increase quantity because people think it's too cheap. Okay? Other ones?
Concert tickets?
What, concert tickets, is that what you said?
That is right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Special
concert.
artists.
So raise the prices and you're gonna sell more. All right, so JC, you started off your statement with what?
Ceteris paribus.
Okay, what does that mean?
Holding the loss constant.
All right, so I agree with you all that this isn't true, written as it is. Because there's lots of things that can change that would make this not true. So what I'm going to do is pull out the old economics bag of tricks and tack on a Latin phrase here, ceteris paribus. Holding all of the things constant. Holding all other things constant. So basically, all of the arguments that you guys were making, I'm going to throw them out the window. So your perception about the quality, Jonathan was one of the last ones that's on my mind. So your knowledge of the quality is held constant. So when I do reduce the price, you're like, oh, I'm getting a deal now, right? You see what I'm saying? So all of those things are held constant. So the iPhone, whatever's cool, whoever's carrying an iPhone, none of that can change. The only variable we're changing is the price. And so the law of demand says if you make it less expensive, you're going to sell more of them. Or if you make it more expensive, you're going to sell less of them. So it goes both directions. All right, so we got to kind of hang our hat on that. So let's go ahead and draw a demand. Give me a good, any good, first good that comes to mind.
Toilet paper.
I saw that, I didn't hear what it was, but you beat the toilet paper. What did you, huh? Beer. Okay. Well, Kayla's been in my class before, so she knows the go-to. So let's do some beer. All right.
Chicken wings and.
So here we are in the beer market, and we're going to be measuring quantity and price. And so this statement says that holding the quantity of chicken wings you've eaten constant, add a price of beer. What do you want this to be? A mug of beer, a case of beer, a keg of beer? Kayla, you were the beer? Did you say beer? Was that you? Okay. What? Case of beer. All right. So we talking natty 30 pack or no? We don't have to get into that level of detail. But let's just say $24. So at $24, roughly a buck of beer here in Ottawa, Kansas. We're going to sell 100 cases at a price of $24. If that price falls to $20, we're going to sell more. Let's just say we're going to sell 160. So this represents 2 points on this law of demand relationship, what we're going to eventually call the demand curve. And so price goes down, we sell more, or vice versa. So my question then is would it be reasonable if I picked off 22, would you expect the quantity to be like 360 out of here at 22? No. Not knowing that this point is here and this point is here, otherwise our demand relationship would look like this and it wouldn't follow the law of demand all of a sudden, right? So it has to be somewhere in here. It doesn't have to be perfectly on the line, but that would not make sense, nor would this. So the demand relationship at 22 would kind of zigzag and then go down. That doesn't make sense. But somewhere in here, it could be here, here, or here. It doesn't have to be a straight line. Most of the stuff for class, we're going to use just a straight line for simplicity, but it really wouldn't have to be. In fact, most real-world demand curves, when they analyze them as kind of a shape like this, convex to the origin relationship. Okay, so we got that going, that we figured the law of demand would be kind of uniform, roughly. And so let's get one more point on here. We'll stick with the straight line. So we go down to $16, and I didn't mean to switch colors on you. We go to 200. So if we connect the dots, we'd have some relationship, and that's what we call our demand curve or demand function. Okay, any questions there? So now, what would make this thing move around on us? So I brought the golf club today to think of what would cause demand to relocate at every price. So you guys come up with a scenario with me where in Ottawa, Kansas, at a price of 24, we'd buy 100. At 20, we'd buy 160. At 16, holding all of the things constant. But now let one of those things change. What would cause the demand curve to shift outward? What would cause an increase in demand? Vivian? A little louder? Quantity. So quantity is the thing that we're measuring. So you're starting to bring in a supply curve, like the actual producers of beer or the liquor stores or something, bringing more supply. And that's where our story is going to go later. But I don't want to do that right now. I want to stick with you, the consumer of beer. You guys are the beer drinkers. we're looking at the economy of Ottawa, Kansas. What would cause there to be an increase in the demand for beer? Leland.
Memorial Day,
Memorial Day, why?
because everybody's gonna go to the lake and get drunk.
Okay, so we have a change in preferences, right? So one of our demand shifters that we're holding constant, so these end up being demand shifters. Let's just go ahead and make a list. So number one, we call it tastes or preferences. So Leland's example was a holiday, like Memorial Day. So on the holiday, we're gonna have a party, we need to get some beer together. Maybe this could be even like a weekend effect or something. And so on a Wednesday, the demand curve's here, but on Memorial Day weekend, Saturday, demand goes out, right? So the demand, the preferences of people are changing because on Wednesday, they're at work, they're coming home and they're making dinner and watching Netflix, and then they're going to bed for their next day's work. But the preferences for beer change as we enter a holiday weekend and we know we're going to get together with our friends on the lake and all that stuff. Okay, good. What else could make this sucker shift to the right and increase? Jonathan.
Today's weather.
Today's weather, okay? How so?
When you're hotter, you want something.
Okay, so yeah, now that would probably fall into this taste or preferences again with the weather, but you're right, that would fall into there. So a hot day, we're gonna change the way we perceive. Just to give you another example, umbrellas. If it's raining outside, all of a sudden my demand for umbrellas goes up. There's an example I heard once that was real world in New York. Umbrellas were for sale on sunny days for, whatever, $4, and they were $12. They tripled the price when the first drop of rain that came down. The vendors on the street just kind of hawking stuff, they'd triple the price. And they would sell them all the time just because of the quick increase in demand. Did I see JC?
Yeah, free pretzel, bag of pretzels for vacation.
Okay, so things that are related. So now I'm at the bar and it's free popcorn or free pretzels or something that is a complement to beer drinking. So number 2 on our list is the price of related goods. PRG is what we'll do in general, the price of related goods. So for example, an increase, or what'd you say, free pretzels? So let's say a decrease in the price, maybe it's free, but we'll just be more general and say a decrease in the price of pretzels leads to an increase in demand for beer. Graphically, that's going to be a shift to the right of the demand curve. So we used to be here, but now that pretzels are free, I used to want to buy 160 at a price of $24 for a case, but now I want to buy 160. At $20, I used to want to buy 160, but now I want to buy 200. At $16, I used to want to buy 200, but now that pretzels are free, I want to buy 240. And so the demand curve shifts outward to D2 from D1 because we're not holding everything constant. We've changed something that has an influence on our beer desires. Okay, so the relatedness part here, and what we're going to talk, this is important stuff that we're building on that's going to help in chapters 12, 13, and 14 when we get there. That's like 2 weeks from now. So you're going to have a good set of notes that we'll refer back to that'll help us with more sophisticated pricing techniques. So these here are, if pretzel goes down and the demand for beer goes up, are these two complements or substitutes, pretzels and beer? Substitutes or complements? Complements. So I tend to drink beer and eat pretzels together. So when one of their prices goes down, I want to buy more of both. I'm going to buy more pretzels, especially if they're free. I'm going to eat more pretzels, but I'm also going to drink more beer. So those two are complements. Now I'm normally not too worried about spelling for the most part, but compliments here is not with an I, like oh, your hair looks nice today, you know, blah blah blah, that type of compliment. But we're completing the set. I like to highlight this one because for compliments you can think of a set of goods, beer and pretzels that we eat together, and you're completing the set of things we're eating together, compliments. All right, what might be a substitute for beer? Seltzers, okay? So, and that's a true story. I don't know if any of you guys follow the beer market or not, but that's one of the reasons the beer companies got into the seltzer business is because they were losing, like Budweiser was losing regular beer sales, and so they're like, oh, we better start making these seltzers too. So a decrease in the price of the seltzers leads to a decrease in the demand for beer. Beer and seltzers being substitutes. So we have just the opposite effect on this demand curve. We wouldn't go to D1, or to D2 rather, we'd shift this way if we had a change in the price of a substitute. Okay? What else would make this sucker shift from D1 to D2? Something else that's important with consumption. Go ahead, Kim.
Having like the Super Bowl.
That would fall into this taster preferences. Super Bowl, like that would be changing that. Noah?
What if like the tax rate on alcohol was raised?
I'm sorry, say it a little louder.
What like the tax rate on alcohol was raised or lowered?
Okay, so yeah, some of the tax stuff, it hits it a little bit different because we're effectively changing the price that way when we add a tax. So I'm going to save taxes for a different part because we're effectively, if we increase the taxes, we're effectively increasing the net price, right? Because we used to go to the store and it was $24 plus 10%. Of course, I didn't build that into this model, but now it's $24 plus 14% if the price was raised. So that really just raises the price of it. So I'm going to save that. There is a way to show that being a shifter, but it's a little bit more unique. So I'm going to save that for a little bit later. Okay, good. What else? Got a couple other key ones here. So what makes you buy more stuff? What are you guys hoping to get with your MBA?
More money.
More money. So more income leads to more purchases, right? So number 3 is kind of a big one, is the income. And we have 2 cases under income. The one is the one you'd kind of suspect for normal goods. So number 1, or let's use A since I'm numbering the other stuff. For normal goods, an increase in income leads to an increase in demand. Just like you were saying, we'd shift from D1 to D2. So I used to be making $30,000 a year, now I'm making $40,000 a year. So I'm buying more beer for the party this weekend for Memorial Day. Or it could be the average income of Ottawa, Kansas. So we might be studying median income, and it's like all of Ottawa is becoming wealthier, or higher income rather. And so as the income of Ottawa per capita grows, that can cause beer demand to increase as well. Okay, so the other case here is what we call an inferior good. For an inferior good, give me an example of a good to where as you get richer, you buy less of it.
Ramen noodles.
Ramen noodles is kind of the classic, the college ramen noodles. It's not to say that I got ramen noodles in my cabinet too, but you're not eating them 4 days a week, right? When you first get that nice job and you're making $50,000 a year, ramen noodles are not at the top of your list anymore of things you're going to eat. So with inferior goods like ramen noodles, so let's go ahead and put example ramen noodles, hot dogs, ramen noodles. Now this isn't true for me, but Natty Light versus Bud Light, right? So if we stayed within the beer category, you might have bought the cheaper beers, Busch Light and all that, in college, but now you're buying a little more expensive beer. Maybe you're even getting into the craft beers or something. All right, so with ramen, an increase in income leads to a decrease in demand, a shift the other direction. Okay. So what happens if Ottawa grows like it does every August? It seems like it's just right around the corner, unfortunately, that I'm going to be back full-time in the classroom, not these one-night-a-week deals. So what happens to the demand for beer when Ottawa University opens up for session and brings 850 people to campus? It goes up, right? We have a couple of liquor store people, right? Leland, you work there? Or
I worked there for a little bit, yeah.
At Blue Sky? Okay. So, or not Blue Sky.
It was Blue Sky.
Oh, it was Blue Sky. Okay. So that can have an effect. So that's the population. So as the population of your economy grows, you just have more mouths to feed, right? So population, an increase in population of the economy will lead to an increase in demand. So the last one I want to mention, what did you guys start to do when gas prices started to seeming to go up every week? Did you fill your tank today or did you wait till next week? Today, right? So your demand for gas today was determined on your expectations about what you thought gas was going to be next week. So expectations are an important part of demand. So your expectations about the future. So an increase in the expected price of beer next week. So I'm going to use this shorthand notation a little bit here. So the superscript E means expected price, the expected future price. So the expected future price of beer, I used to think it was going to go up by 3% a year. Now it seems like with the inflation it's going to go up by 8% a year. I'd rather buy it today than tomorrow. So that leads to an increase in the demand for beer today. I'll just write today up here just so we're clear on write the word today. Today. So that would shift from D1 to D2. Okay, questions or comments there? Yeah.
Could like a new good be introduced that like made it easier for your hangovers to be relieved, to where you were kind of had an incentive
Sure.
to drink more?
That would work. What do you think? Where would that fall in? It's already up here.
Would it be the
Complement or substitute or income or taste or preferences are different or... So we got a magic pill that takes away the hangover tomorrow so you can get wasted and not have to pay the penalty the next day when you have to work at 9 o'clock. What shifter captures that? Complement, right? So we have a complement now with that innovation, and so that complement would cause an increase in demand for beer. Okay, anything else? All right, so now this is all kind of capturing the general movement of the prices going down with these up arrow, down arrow type of stuff. I think I'm getting rid of this too. So kind of one of the main topic of this chapter is the elasticity of demand, which is a little bit different than the demand itself. And it's really the reason why economists get paid 6 figures, because we're in the tomorrow business. We're in the prediction business, right? And so what companies want to know is, if I increase my prices 10%, what's going to happen to the bottom line, right? What's going to happen? And so to analyze the bottom line, we're going to look at the quantity effect from that. So this is the elasticity of demand. So the elasticity of demand is a number that shows the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a given change in price. That number is the ratio of two percentages. The number is the ratio of the percentage change of quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Okay, so to kind of motivate this then, let's look at two demand curves. All right, let's give me another good. Any good besides beer?
Seltzers.
Besides, I guess well, let's run with toilet paper. Who said toilet paper? Was that Jeremiah? Okay. So toilet paper. So one toilet paper curve has a pretty steep demand curve, and another toilet paper curve is pretty flat. So on your graphs, draw one pretty steep and the other one pretty flat. And the reason we want to do that is that now we're going to pick a couple numbers that touches both demand curves. And so let's say we've got $15 for toilet paper, buys you 100 in this demand curve, and it also buys you 100 over here. We're not perfectly drawing this to scale, so don't worry about that. So it's like two hypothetical toilet paper demand curves. And so to get back to our definition, which one of these demand curves, let's call the one to the left demand curve A, situation A, and the one to the right, situation B. Which demand curve shows a bigger responsiveness, A or B? Let's go to the chat box on this, you guys, so everybody online. So we've got the graph to the left is the steeper one, and the graph to the right is the flatter one. So just go to the chat box. Which one do you think has a greater responsiveness? A or B? So go to the chat box, and where are we at in here? How many A's do I got? Just show your hand. How many? Got a few A's. 1, 2, nice and high. 1, 2. How many B's? So the B's are overwhelming here. So we got the B's. Okay. And what did our chat box say here? We got A, it's a bit hard to hear. Okay, I gotcha. We got BBB and maybe an A. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we're having internet problems or what the deal is, why that one would be not working right, but so I apologize. We'll have a recording, by the way, off of the iPhone, not the Zoom. So afterwards, if you guys have some things you kind of wanted to go back and review because it was choppy or something, we'll have that for you to go off of too. All right, so I think the easiest way to look at this then is to say, well, if we have a price change from $15 to $13, this one goes up by a little bit, and this one goes up by a lot. So which one is more responsive in terms of that price change? B, right? So the responsiveness has a bigger bang for the buck. We're dropping it by $2 in each case, and then we're getting a lot more quantity. So let's say this one goes up to 120, and for this one it goes up to 160, just to make up some numbers here. Well, now we have enough information to calculate the elasticity. So for panel B, go ahead, I'll walk around the room and check your work, but let's have you work this thing out. So let's start together as a class though. How the hell do you calculate a percentage change again? What's the formula for that? New minus old divided by the old. Remember, the new number minus the old number divided by the old number. Let's go ahead and write that out on your paper so that everybody's got it. So the percentage change in quantity is the new quantity minus the old quantity divided by the old quantity. And on the bottom, we have the new price minus the old price divided by the old price. That's the normal way we do percentage change, but to really mess with students, we don't do it that way for this. So, red alert, red alert. This is the, like when we do inflation in the economy, it's the new price minus the old price divided by the old price. When we look at tuition rates for college, universities have grown 11%. That's what we're doing, right? Our old tuition, our new tuition minus our old tuition divided by our old tuition. So that's correct, is the normal way you do that. But there's something unique here with the demand curve. And so instead of taking the new number and the old number, we're going to take the average of the two. And the reason is that we want there to be the same number whether you go backwards or forwards. And so the problem with the new number minus the old number business is that if I now go from 160 back to 100 or 13 to 15, then the new number and the old number have flip-flopped, and you're not going to get the same answer for the percentage change. So in order to solve for that, one tiny little amendment here is that when you divide, we're going to take the average quantity and the average price. And so this is called the Arc Elasticity. Your book has a short, but maybe too sweet for some of you that you're not comfortable with. This is one section where you might want to go to that Principles of Microeconomics textbook, and they'll have a more expanded version of this, of the discussion on elasticities. But otherwise, if you just pretty much memorize the formula and kind of hopefully get the gist of it, you can probably get by. All right, so now, what are we doing for this problem? What's the new quantity? We're doing panel B, by the way. What's the new quantity when I did a price decrease? So we had the price went from $15 to $13. So the new price and the old price, we had the old price at 15 and the new. And so here, bouncing off the demand curve, the old goes with the old. So 100 is the old quantity. And the new quantity is 160. All right, now you guys should be able to plug and chug. So if you've got a non-phone calculator, pull it out. If you don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal, honestly. You're not getting graded on this right now, but plug and chug. You guys should all be putting 6 numbers into this formula right now and see if you can come to something. I'll walk around the room. I'll look at you guys on Zoom here too when you come back. So I encourage you to have a notebook paper next to you that you're taking notes like the people in class are. So I'll ask you to hold up your notebook paper when I finish walking around the room. Okay, so you got your number already. Okay, where's your formula? Okay, so you got that plugged and chugged. I don't know the answer to this. I just made up these numbers tonight. So we'll see if we can come to consensus. What are you doing? Okay, 13, 15, okay. So now, yeah, write that out. You might want to have side paper, just because it's kind of hard to do all that on computer, just for this type of thing. You got your little notebook, okay? Alright, so now start to get an answer. So hopefully you can all plug and chug, what kind of answers are you getting for the final answer? If you guys have gotten there already. Let me check online here. You guys hold up some notebooks to.
Yeah.
Let me close the chat deal so I can see a little bit better. Let's see, Noah, a little closer, Noah. All right, there we go. Okay, all right. So yeah, 15, 13, yeah, you got the gist of it. Jack, Cindy, Kim. Kim's frozen. Okay, gotcha, Kim.
I couldn't actually hear you before, so yeah, I actually didn't know.
So you weren't able to get it, Cindy?
The screen's a little blurry.
Okay, so you got the, did you get the base numbers here? We had 100, 160, 15, and 13. What did you guys get for answers? Just shout them out. Whoever's got the right answer, extra credit.
4.
I got a 4. I got a -1.
0.9.
0.9.
3.83.
3.83. 3.23.
4.5.
4.5. Wow, we got all over the place. Okay. Any other ones? All right, so you got the idea that it's a number, and then we'll talk about the importance of that number here in a little bit. So, new number minus old number for the quantities. What do we got? 160. So the elasticity of demand. 160 minus 100 over 140 is the average between those two. Oh wait, we got a little problem with that. 130 divided by 15 and 13. So what's this number?
15 minus 15 over 4.
15 minus 13?
13 minus 13.
Okay, you guys are helping me get to my next point
It's
here.
going to be negative.
So it's negative 0.9.
All right.
Negative 3.83.
So what do we got here? This is like 60 over 130. And this is -2 over 14, which inverts to that.
Yeah, man.
We knock that out. We knock this out. Down to 3. 3 times 14 divided by 13? What does that equal?
Negative
3. Those of you who got a calculator, what?
Negative 3.23.
Negative 3.23. Ding, 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 ding. Who's that?
That was wrong.
Not negative.
It's absolute value.
Yeah, it's not.
Absolute value.
It's not negative, but who did the 3.23? Oh, Kayla, yes, but it was she meant absolute value, right?
Yeah.
All right, so it is negative 3.23. So nobody gets the extra credit tonight, unfortunately. But that's the idea here, 3.23. So how we'll show that on the curve is that at these averages of 14 and 130, that's going to be right in the middle here. So along the curve here, the elasticity of demand is negative 3.23. And when we talk about elasticities, they're always going to be negative for the price elasticity of demand. Why?
Because of the downward slope.
Because of downward sloping demand, which is the law of demand, right? So that's always going to be negative. So just to confuse students like Caleb, who's had this before, we always talk about them as a positive, which really we're kind of like putting it in the absolute value here of 3.23. So, but it's really negative 3.23 because of the law of demand. All right, now, what if I was to go down to 11? If I go down to 11, and this is a linear demand curve, what's this number, what's the quantity? So I'm going to go down to 11. What's the quantity at a price of 11? So we had 100 to 160. What'd you say? 220, right? So we're going to add another 60 on. Because it's a linear demand curve, we got rise over run, the slope of the line, so down 2 over 60, down 2 over 60, so we're at a quantity of 220. If we were to plug and chug the numbers again, what would the elasticity be?
3.2.
3.23. Let's just check. Go ahead and plug the numbers in using the 220. Because you guys need practice, I could tell. Look at this. Nobody got the right answer. So go ahead and recalculate. Recalculate. Kayla got it, except for a pesky little negative sign. Soon as you have proven your answer, if it is 3.23, negative 3.23, shout it out. And I want you to prove it, and then I'll come look at your paper and you'll get extra credit. But I want to see it on paper with these new numbers.
Is it between 220 and 160 or 220 and 100?
220 and 160. We're just going the next level down. Yeah, with the same two deals. So. I haven't heard anybody yet. Did I beat you?
Negative 2.2.
Negative 2.2 is our first entry. Negative 1.89 is our second entry.
Yeah.
I got a yeah and a yeah, so we got, sounds like we're honing in. So if somebody could do 36 divided by 19 for me? See if the magic of old school math works out. What is it? 1.89? Negative. Okay, so, yeah.
Is it only the average between the last two?
It's always,
prices?
yeah, the average of the two numbers you're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah, in between this point and this point, since we went the other way.
Okay.
All right, so now here the elasticity has changed in absolute value to 1.89. Are people more responsive or less responsive? Are people more responsive or less responsive when we move from the point here, I guess let's just call it A. The first one we calculated was at point A at the averages, the 3.23, and now we're at point B. Are people more responsive or less responsive? Less. Less. Okay, so this is what's kind of a little counterintuitive, is that most of you thought the elasticity would stay the same. Why?
Same.
Because it's the same slope. But the elasticity is the ratio of the percentage changes. And so it's related to the slope, but it's not equal to the slope. So check it out. If we were at a really high price up here of a $1 change of this thing, what was I at? 15, I guess this is only like 17. But if I do a small change here from 17 to 16, that would be the percentage change, right? But what's the quantity? If I go from 1 to 2, what is that roughly, like using the old calculation? If something doubles, what's the percentage change? 100%, right? If we go from 1 to 2. So what I'm showing here is that at really high prices, the percentage change is very small, and this is huge. So this number's big, this number's small, and so a big number divided by a small number is still a big number, right? And then as we move this direction, the same thing happens down here when we go from $1 to $2. That's like 100% change in price, but the quantity is a very small quantity. So this whole thing, the percentage changes are changing along the linear demand curve. And so the demand is becoming more elastic or more responsive. So let's write any questions before I'll write down some of the comments there, so you got them in your notes. Online, thumbs up. If you're not frozen, okay. There, I can see the delay already. All right, so, okay, so, note. The elasticity of demand changes along a linear demand curve. As you move down the slope, demand becomes less responsive. Less responsive means less elastic. Or the new word, or more inelastic. So I'll use the words elastic and inelastic to try to describe consumers' willingness to buy this product. So before I erase this stuff, coming back to this one, you guys nailed it right away, or most of you did, saying that this one was the more responsive. This demand curve is more elastic. This curve is less elastic, or we say it's inelastic. So this is like gasoline. Some of you were bringing up stuff like gasoline, cigarettes, cocaine might look like this, right? So some things that we're addicted to, the price goes up, I'm still gonna need my fix. The heroin's got to be hitting this vein. I don't care if it's $60 a hit or $120 a hit, right? So now some people might say, gosh, that's kind of steep. I do need something in here. Maybe fentanyl would work, right? So do we have that problem in the United States right now? Yeah. So we go from opioids, we're prescribed them, and then you're hooked. And you're like, oh, the doctor won't write a script. I can get them on the streets, but what's the street price of the opioids? Oh, heroin, that's a lot cheaper. Let me shift into that, right? And then we kind of do that downward spiral, and either you pull yourself out of it or you die, is what the kind of the crisis in the United States is with some of that. That's all economics, is what I'm trying to boil this back to, right? So we can think about that being economics. So the demand curve being steep like this, one of the little cheat things that I'll give you is that the steeper the demand curve starts to get, the more it starts to look like an I for inelastic. So as the demand curve gets steeper and steeper, so if I take this relatively flat one, but then I start to rotate it, the steeper demand curve starts to look like an I. So just kind of remember that that is relatively inelastic. However, along any straight line demand curve, the elasticity has this thing going for it, that it's changing, whether it's steep or not, steep or flat. Okay, let me pause there. Questions there? All right, what's the formula for our firms maximizing profits? Just to give you a little whiplash. What's the profit equation? Recall.
minus T.
What is it?
Total revenue.
Total revenue minus total cost. All right, nice and simple. Total revenue minus total cost. And so now, what's the formula for total revenue? Price times quantity. And we can think of total cost as the average total cost per unit times the quantity, which gives us our nice little neat package that we'll use quite a bit in this class. The difference between the price per unit and the average total cost per unit times the number of units my single product company has sold is one way to kind of neatly tie a bow on what is the profits this year, this quarter. Remember, it's a flow variable. And so when we talk about the income statement, that's where profits are looked at on what you did this year, as opposed to maybe the balance sheet where we're taking account of some of our assets and other things. All right, now what did the law of demand tell us in terms of price and quantity? What did the law of demand inform us about? Inverse relationship. Now, if I go back to my profit equation, what does that mean for the business? You want to make more money? Easy, raise price. I know math. Holding all other things constant, if I increase this, what happens to profits? If I increase price, holding other things constant, what happens to profits? They go up. Now, is that the mentality of 80% of the public? Including our president, Joe Biden, I think, with some of the stuff he says about, oil companies are just raising prices. That's why we have this inflation, and the companies are just greedy. Well, there's an inverse relationship, so it's not that easy, right? If they could raise prices with holding other things constant, would they? Yeah, they'd be dumb not to, since their goal is to maximize profits. But the real challenge that companies face is that if they raise the price, what happens to Q? It goes down. Now, what happens overall? In order to get this to go up, I've never actually presented this way in 30 years, so you guys are in for a treat, hopefully. In order for profits to go up, what must be true about the relationship going on here? For revenues to go up at least. Luke?
You're selling more quantity or enough quantity of the price increase to make more money than you were before.
You're real close, I think, but I don't think you quite nailed it. Talk to me in terms, and let me give you another shot, because I think you kind of have the right notion, but this is going down, this is going up. In order for this to go up, what needs to happen over here in terms of the combination of the two?
Your price increase needs to be larger than your quantity decrease.
And it's your percentage increase, right? But you're right, the price effect, which we're really going, let's say, from $10 to $12 or whatever, it's a $2 raise, but that effect has to have a bigger influence than the quantity effect. Because the law of demand says this is the way it's going to work, but if this arrow is bigger than this arrow, kind of conceptually to think about it that way, if this arrow is bigger than this arrow, then revenues are going to go up. We haven't really talked about this side, so it's not quite fair to, maybe I kind of jumped the gun here thinking about this, but let's focus in on revenues. But the flip side is true then too. If the quantity effect is a bigger effect than the price effect, then revenues are going to go down, right? So when we talk money in the cash register, we need to be thinking about elasticities. And that's why we spent some time talking about this. So one of my favorite graphs in economics, we're going to do next here. It looks like our internet must be pooping out. I see people dropping. All right, so upstairs I want to put a demand curve. So upstairs, I want you to touch the vertical and horizontal axis this time with your demand curve. So just kind of draw what we were drawing before. All right, and so now the graph downstairs is going to be connected to it vertically. That's why we're stacking it on top of each other. And here we're going to be measuring total revenue, which is equal to price times quantity, just like the exercise we just went through. So the quantities are what's connecting us. So if this was 1,000 units, then this is 1,000 units. So these two graphs are connected vertically through the quantity. And then what I want you to do is draw a little mountain. And so there's kind of a specific way to draw this for reasons I'll get into, but take the halfway point between your endpoint at the horizontal axis, Draw a point, come straight down and make a dot down here. It doesn't matter where you make it. And now we can kind of think about what I call revenue mounting, is what we're going to draw. So over here, if I set prices at this level, I guess I'll just pull a number out here and say $150 per unit. How many am I selling?
0.
0. So what's my total revenue?
0.
0. Price times quantity is 0. So that's another point here. And at the other end, if I price my stuff at 0, how many am I going to sell? 1,000. Do people like 0 price?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is our free pretzels, and so we do free prices, right? So 0 price is kind of the geeky economist way of saying it's free. So at a price of 0, then we've got people buying 1,000, and so at 1,000, we're still not going to have any money in the cash register because we didn't charge anything for it. And then we have revenue mountain in between. So this thing peaks out, comes down, and goes down. It's a parabola upside down. And so you can draw revenue mountain. So on revenue mountain, total revenues are maximized at this quantity, right? So at this quantity, let's just call it Q1 and stay kind of generic here. At Q1, revenues are maximized. So isn't that the quantity we want to produce? Sounds good. Except one problem. What is the company trying to maximize? And so are we doing that at Q1? No, we're maximizing what? Revenue. But we're kind of ignoring the rest of the equation. So be careful with this stuff. Here we're talking about money in the cash register. Revenues would be maximized, but that's not necessarily the quantity that we would want to produce. At this quantity, the elasticity of demand is unitary, which means it's equal to 1. So at that point, the percentage change of price, you jack up prices 10%, you lose 10% in sales, right? You jack your prices 5%, you lose 5% in sales. So it's this relationship between price and quantity where it's unitary. Okay, so then over on this side and this side is the next part we want to get at. So imagine, I'm going to stay generic here, we're at a price of P1 to P2. And maybe I won't stay generic. Let's do what is this, 150, that's 75, 130 down to 127. So a $3 price change. I'm going to stay generic on the quantities, but at P1 to P2, quantity goes up with a price decrease. What happens to revenues? That's the beauty of this graph, is that we start to see when I move from point A to point B and I decrease my price $3, my quantity goes up. Not only that, but my revenues go up from A prime to B prime. So revenues have climbed because the quantity effect was bigger than the price effect. The big arrow and the little arrow analogy I was doing earlier. However, if we now check out, I'm going to change colors for no particular reason. If I now take P3 and P4, which I'm going to intentionally do another $3 price change, but now we're at, what are we at here? Maybe 60 and 57. So I'm still doing a $3 price change, but now I get a different effect on my relationship between quantity and price. I'm going to still increase my quantity by the same amount because it's a linear demand curve. But money in the cash register has gone down from point C to D, C prime to D prime. We'll call this point C to point D. All of this relates back to the elasticity of demand. So in this range, demand was elastic. So this is the elastic range of the demand. So the percentage change in quantity over the percentage change in price, we had a big number. So the upstairs was bigger than the downstairs. So this was all greater than 1. So this is the elastic range. All the way from this point to this midpoint. And then over here, just the opposite happens. The elasticity of demand is less than 1 in absolute value, by the way. And this is the inelastic range. Okay, so now we're connecting part of the dots of why we talk about elasticities and how that relates to you as a manager of your company, because when you do changes, it's not automatic that you're going to raise revenues. So any questions for clarification so far? I'm going to give you a quick little example of the power of this. So, example. Suppose you are planning a increase in price of 10% when the elasticity of demand in absolute value is 0.93. What will be the effect on total revenue? So suppose you're planning an increase in price of 10% when the elasticity of demand is 0.93. What will be the effect on total revenue? Increase or decrease or stay the same? Will that be a good idea to raise your prices? So quantity, raise your price. What's going to happen to quantity? Goes down, law of demand. So that was kind of the opener that we had. So we know law of demand is going to kick in. What will happen to total revenues? Luke?
Well, if you're increasing your price by 10%, you would be decreasing the quantity sold by 9.3%. So therefore, your total effect on total revenue would go down.
Okay, how'd you get your 9.3%?
I did the 10 or like 100 times the 0.93.
So the elasticity of demand formula is percentage change in what over percentage change in what?
Quantity over price.
Quantity over price. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is we don't know what this is going to be, but we know this was 10, and we know this is 0.93. So doing a little algebra this way, the percentage change in quantity is equal to 9.3%. Negative or positive, that's what we always got to be a little careful of.
Negative.
Negative, because price was going up. So sales are going to fall by 9.3%. So what's going to happen to total revenue? It goes... So we got price going up by 10%. Is that good or bad in terms of revenues? Good. It leads to them going up. Quantities going down, which would be the bad. but the good outweighs the bad. Right? That's kind of the story that we're doing here. Now that is pictured here in this. So we knew that demand was inelastic because the number was less than 1, 0.93. So it's somewhere on this side of the equation, which means a price increase from P4 to P3, D to C if you will, is corresponding to a points on the revenue curve going from D prime to C prime. So revenues are climbing when demand is inelastic. Okay, so to answer this question, since we can use this and kind of talking about it general, so on a multiple choice problem like you might have in your homework or test, you know, is it a increase, decrease, or stay the same, question mark. From this in general, without even crunching numbers here, we can know that it's going to be an increase. And you're done with that problem. If it's just a multiple choice problem with the direction of the change.
Can you show that on the graph?
That was what I did here. So we go up in price from D to C, and then we climb revenue mountain from D prime to C prime. So that would definitely increase. And otherwise, the reason I presented it this way is so that we could look at the negative effect on quantity isn't as big as the positive effect on price. And you get to the same conclusion. Okay, any other questions or comments there? All right, so before we leave this, so we're going to take a break here in 4 minutes. I just want to mention, because the textbook mentions them but doesn't do too much more with them, we can do elasticities for anything. So we've been focusing on what we call the own price elasticity. It was the price of the good. But remember when we talked about pretzels and beer? We could do a price elasticity for that too. So we can do a what's called a cross price elasticity. And that you're just measuring the sensitivity of substitutes or complements. So here we could look at the percentage change in the quantity of beer from a percentage change in the price of pretzels. So instead of using the price of beer, we're going to do the exact same math, but we're going to use the price of pretzels. And then that number could either be a positive number or a negative number like we did. So in the example we did, the price of pretzels went down to being free and beer sales went up. So down and up, that's a negative number, right? So when the cross price elasticity is less than 0, which just means a fancy math way of saying it's a negative number, then that implies beer and pretzels are complements. If the cross price elasticity is greater than 0, then we must be talking about beer and seltzer. Substitutes. And then the other one to mention is the income elasticity. We talked about incomes in Ottawa going up from 30,000 to 40,000. So that's like a 25% increase in prices, or in income, right? And so imagine if we can do an analysis of if income goes up by 25% in Ottawa, what happens to the quantity sales of beer? It goes up by more than 25, less than 25. So we're doing the same type of math, same type of analysis with the income elasticity. So here we'd be looking at the percentage change in income, the percentage change in beer up top, quantity of beer, divided by the percentage change in income. If the income elasticity number is a positive number, we're back to what we described earlier, that good is a normal good. If the elasticity number that gets calculated is less than 0, ramen noodles. An inferior good. income goes up and we buy less of those goods, inferior goods. So all we've done to get now is knitted together the concepts of shifting the demand curve and the law of demand, now with this elasticity concept that quantifies it. Okay, questions or comments there? Let's do a break. So quarter 2, let's see if I can get the quiz rolling. Anybody who rolled in late, come on up. Bring your pen, I'll just have you take it up here. Grab a chair. Okay, you guys online, I'm going to try to zoom in on my other machine now and see if I rebooted it. See if whatever problem we were having before is gone. Okay, I'm actually I'm going to try rebooting that other screen. Okay. Thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Okay. Now I got to open up the folder.
Cap's open already? Where's it come?
Oh gosh, where is all my stuff? Oh, there it is. Alright, moment of truth here. I'm going to try a screen share. Oops. You guys can skip the first question and just go doing the, not you guys, you guys online. It was just feedback on what you thought was the toughest thing. Just answer the multiple choice. There's only 3 of them. Alright, thumbs up if you can see that. Thank God. Alright, answer those questions. And then email me after you're done. Kim, are you there? I don't see your video, but... Maybe she had to run. Okay. I'll just leave that up. You can... Woo! Oh, it is a little cooler on the hallway.
Isn't the one that the upstairs one that controls everything for the building? Like
I don't honestly know. So, yeah, I mean, feel free to call security if you want. It's definitely plenty steamy in there.
Must you send an email in?
Yes. Once you're finished, just email me your answers and then you guys can go and break. I'm going to give an extra 5 minutes, so feel free to go. Come back at 10 minutes to the hour. It's fine. Yeah. I'll take it. Yep. How was your food service?
Not bad. I mean, they're a better group. We had the camp that was there last were younger
So are
kids.
they here for a camp?
Yeah, the wrestling.
The what?
Wrestling.
Oh, wrestling.
Yeah. Last time we had football kids and they were younger. Crazy. Came in running. Next day I told them,
Big food
you guys
fight.
will eat, but if you run, no one's eating.
I can. Let's see how much you I can, but that's like Jay's the head of housing. We have the same.
Is everybody online done?
Oh, yeah, 'cause Chris is coming back.
Noah, are you complete?
I'm ready to coach. I need a relay and it needs to be filled. I need to pay the bills.
Don't worry, partner. You're good.
You answer the question this time. You think that say in your house,
Yeah.
you're the guy. You have to go to the shop.
I made the decision that I told Shabby based on that. In a situation, I just make a decision. He said,
It's not my business.
oh yeah. He says, as long as they don't dirty or anything. Then he just needs to sign the release.
She's like, oh, so we're gonna have that.
I'm trying to do it now. Did you figure it out? Oh, what have you been doing it? What have you been doing? So his initial market price. So I have the same numbers.
That's all the same.
But if it's just if he's given his marginal cost is $4 per share. Suppose his marginal cost is $5 per share.
It's from Northern.
Desired that's the second one. His initial price markup on the marginal cost. Initial. I'll give you an explanation. It does. Price minus So 8.5 minus 4 is when you got the 4.5.
Not bad, meglio. Elasticity Formula.
Are you gonna be starting?
Starting? Starting what? If it was test?
I
don't know, I'll speak to Coach.
No, the question doesn't depend on him. He said that.
We will take us out and start with them.
I wasn't in that Zoom, so.
Ah, I see.
It doesn't
Losing
matter.
points count. That's like.
Partner, that gonna happen.
Coach said not for the Zoom,
Well, you're asking things, man. You say.
You should not ask that you should that you don't wanna be in this meeting.
What?
He doesn't wanna hear you saying, oh, I don't wanna be in this meeting, coach.
I didn't say
You
that.
have to find a way to be there. I mean, you do your phone sideways, you know, like, classes in there.
I like the dentist.
Doesn't matter.
A dentist is doing like that, and then he's gonna see that you're committed, you're committed.
Doesn't matter. Just see.
The most important thing is bond and team. That's why we got this.
That's why I'm hosting all the international events.
No, but you hosted inside, Chow. Nobody else.
I'm hosting Azure, I'm hosting the German King.
That's an educated show.
You're right.
So, you supporting Jordan's competition, Chow.
I don't think there's anyone in the conference that can challenge me in the air. No one in the conference can challenge me 1v1. So,
Excuse you?
Pretty confident, dude.
I've only been beaten twice in my
Why?
life.
How about practice? How many times have you been practice? That's the point.
I'm out of the conversation.
Look at the small guy.
How many times?
That's crazy.
If you go to Instack, they have stats on solutions. What's that? They have like how many times you walk in a way at a time. These classes you made, tells you the stat. I have a 99% execution.
Oh, even you told me across you scored one.
That's what two.
Kim, did you take the quiz?
One Kansas Wisdom, one Oklahoma Wisdom.
Oh, your audio is still connecting. Try to use the chat box if you can hear me. Well, there, you might be connected now. No, no. Noah, are you there? Are you not able to use the chat box? Let me go to the chat box. Oh, maybe you did. Alright. I'm done, I just have to email. Okay, great.
A personal challenge. Why in the third degree? Why in the third degree?
Why third degree what?
Yeah, why is that third degree? Why in third degree? Increase or cancel the degree. Why in third degree? You know what third degree is? That can be like hospital question. were behind Carlos, and both of us were taking calls at the same time, and he pulled my shirt, and I thought, I can't wait to the
That is a fake ass story.
I have a big bump on my shirt.
You have a bump because you fell. I heard the coach say, yeah, I saw when you fell. I saw when you fell.
I was going up, so it comes up behind me, he does this.
I did not mean to go. What is that?
For sure, it's this for you guys, and then they can, they
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to.
Or is it set?
It looks like it's at about 75, 80 degrees.
Because it's the red is the
Right,
set.
yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so that's why it's so hot in here. If you want, I can go.
It's secure. Yeah, can you do that for me? Yeah, because I'm gonna start
Yeah.
button. Yeah. Just come into class if you can.
I'll let you know.
I wonder why they have that. You know, I kind of noticed with the active shooter that this room was super hot.
Those
too.
cows were burning
Yeah,
up here yesterday.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I'll give them a call right now.
Yeah, I wonder if the heat's actually on.
I'm just letting you know I won't be here Tuesday because I'm getting surgery on my wrist. And that's the day I had to plan it. This was weeks before I had to plan it on Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, so you got the recording and, you know, the points aren't gonna kill you for one class, but if you're, I assume you'll be locked out or something, right?
Yeah.
You won't be able to join probably.
I mean, I can maybe try so I can.
If you can, you can, you know,
But if I look out of
if
it,
you can, then you'll get at least the attendance type points. So even if you're a zombie, I won't call on you.
Okay, good.
Okay, does this look familiar? One of you did not put your names on last week. This other stuff is just kind of irrelevant. That's somebody's writing.
Yeah, it's definitely you.
That's you? Okay, you were kind of my first guess. Write your name on there. Because
I was wondering, because I got a 0 and I was like, what happened?
you have a big fat 0 right now.
Gosh, that's terrible. It's so bad. Yeah, let's go.
Oh, we might be ready to do
I just had to eat some old crunch stuff.
Oh, it's gone? It could be like that. It had to be one of them.
Why don't you get breakfast for them?
I thought he was going to go into the counseling office. That's all I wanted. That's what I said. I was like, this shit, counseling. I don't know. If they want someone full-time,
Recording in progress.
It's chill. It's chill.
That's so unnecessary. That's whatever you
There's no choice to go back, you know what you gotta do. No, but take advantage of it, then that's not okay. Like, or that might change the conversation.
All right, number one, a retailer must pay $9 per hour to hire 13 workers. If the retailer only needs to hire 12 workers, a wage rate of 7 is sufficient. What is the marginal cost of the 13th worker? A, B, C, or D? C, D, D, C.
X. How did you get that?
So we're going from how much you're paying each of the workers. So for if you have 12 at $7, you got to look at your total labor bill and then the difference between the labor bill. Because when you raise your price, you're not only raising it for the marginal worker, you're not just spending 9, you're spending an extra $2 on everybody else when you go the opposite direction, right? When you increase the price. If production levels exceed a level which marginal costs equal marginal revenue, A, B, C, or D?
C.
C.
Probably wrong.
Everybody say C?
I said C.
B. Production should be reduced. All right, so if production exceeds the level at which marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, so we're beyond that cost is too much, then production's not generating profits. We know that for sure, right? We're going to get into, not tonight, but next week, I think, or maybe it's even the week after, that profit maximizing decision. But revenues or profits are going to be maximized where they're equalized, right? Marginal benefit equals marginal cost. Which of the following is not true if a firm shuts down and produces 0 in the short run? A, B, C, or D?
D.
D. So we still got to pay some money. Fixed costs will be less than 0.
What was 2?
2 was B. Production should be reduced.
But didn't you say we know for sure that they're not generating profits?
No, this says not generating profits at all. So it's possible that we're still generating profits, but we're not maximizing profits. So the best answer is B. And like I said, we'll get into that relationship here, but it's basically what we did from last week was marginal benefit, marginal cost. And so we had a J-shaped marginal cost curve, and now when we're talking about businesses, the marginal benefit is the marginal revenue of an incremental unit. And so if we are at a production where for this unit at 112 units, the cost of the 112th unit was $20, and the revenue generated by the 112th unit was $8. Is that a smart unit to make? No. So reduce it. Go this way. And then if we go too far, we're like, whoopsie, we went down to 80. Is 80 the profit maximizing? No, the revenue generated by the 80th unit was 20. The cost was 8, so that's good. You're making $12. But what about the 81st unit? Would that be a good one? Yes, because the revenue generated by the 81st unit is bigger than the cost of the 81st unit. And so where do we maximize profits? Where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Every time we're making an extent decision, should I do a little more? Should I do a little less? We're always looking at the benefits and the cost of the move. Okay, so that's total excitement. And now, what are we going to do? We're going to look at the demand curve in a little bit different way. So I know you guys got pummeled with calculations and statistics and all that crazy stuff. I need a blue. Gotta have my blue. I like the blue. So we have a name for the value that consumers get that's above the price that they pay, and it's called consumer surplus. Super important concept here. So the law, what's going on here? Just changed out the oil. All right, it's coming, it's coming. So, back to our beer. 24 bucks, 100 units. And do draw a new graph for this. Don't use the old one because we're going to do something totally different now. But I'll use the same numbers just to motivate this. So we have 3 points.
Still on the screen for us?
Oh, I'm sorry, yep. Let me get you in 1 second here. In fact, let me just stop right away because, thank you. Now I can try to run dual camera for you, but it's not very easy to do because they don't give me a very long cord. But maybe that'll help at some point. If you guys switch to the thing. Did the share screen stop? Oh, there it goes. It's flipping now. Okay. All right. So redrawing our demand curve that we had before, just to motivate this concept. If the price of beer is $20, we had 160 people wanting to buy it in our Ottawa economy, which means that there's people out there that got a deal. How many of you felt like you've gotten a deal when you went and bought something at Walmart? How many of you get screwed every time you go? Like every time you go, you never get a deal. Maybe there was one time, right? So this is part of the value part. So this person out here, the 100th, to get back to our marginal analysis, the 100th person, what we're doing is we're ordering it from the highest valued people to the lowest value. So the thing that you want to do here is think about there being a value spectrum. And these are the high value customers. Why do I call them high value customers over here? And this is the lower value customers. Are we saying they're not as good of a human being? They
Your
are.
screen is frozen.
Okay. Okay, hopefully it'll come around. Is everybody's screen frozen? Or is it something Kim's having? Thumbs up if your screen's okay.
Here you are.
Okay. All right, so yeah, like I said, there might be some lags, and I'll send out the good recording with the other camera afterwards, so you can come back and review some things if you need to. Why am I calling these guys high value customers over here and low value? The 160th case sold is a person who bought the case of beer, and the 10th case of beer, the person who happened to be. Why am I calling these guys high value customers, low value customers?
They place a higher value on the product.
Good, just because they place internally a higher value on the product. Now, I don't exactly know who they are always. Sometimes I might be able. That's where we're going to get into advanced topics 2 weeks from now. Chapters 12, 13, and 14 is going to be on this stuff more. So this is kind of to lay the foundation that these guys over here, we have the customers, if you will, ordered from high value to low value. Who's willing to pay the most? These are the alcoholics, right? They got to put the 40 down by 10 a.m., right? There's a new liquor at, I went to the liquor store yesterday, and Taka. You guys familiar with Taka? T-A-K-K-A vodka? I was surprised. Come on, don't we have any alcoholics in here?
It's a little too early.
I was surprised that it was $4.99 for a $7.50 of vodka. It was flavored vodka, but it was still 60 proof. $4.99. I mean, it was bigger than, or about the same expense as a beer you could have gotten out of the case. $4.99 for this whole thing of vodka. So I asked them, and they said, yeah, it's not very good quality. And I'm like, but some people don't care about that, right? So we know who we're talking about there. on this end of the spectrum, high value versus low value customers. All right, so now what we can do is estimate the value to all of the consumers. So consumer surplus, CS, is the dollar value measure of the difference between a dollar value measure of the difference between what a consumer is willing to pay, what they're willing to pay, which is the height of the demand curve. We got a question in back? Samir?
You're talking about the liquid actually.
Huh?
You're talking about the liquid.
Ah.
I have a friend that actually tried.
Well, maybe we should have you come up top and talk about it. We can talk after class, maybe. All right. So the willingness to pay is the height of the demand curve. The difference between the what the consumer is willing to pay and what they actually pay. Which is the market price. For each unit consumed. So now we're going to look at it a little differently. We've all gotten deals when we went to Walmart, and we were willing to pay, $20. I'm sorry, we were willing to pay $30 because we had a big Memorial Day weekend party, and the price at the liquor store was on sale for $20, right? We've all gotten deals like that. But now what we want to do is think about all of those deals for everybody as the economy's value of engaging in the market system. So we're going to take the alcoholics' value, which is way up here at, looks like $31, and they only had to pay $20. So they have $11 of consumer surplus. Then we've got the person who bought the 100th case. They were willing to pay $24, but they only paid $20. For the 50th case, they were willing to pay this, they only paid $20. Willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual. And when we add up everybody's deals from the highest valued customer to the lowest valued customer, we're calculating the consumer surplus of the market. What's the area of a triangle, since we're pushing our math boundaries tonight?
Half the base times
1/2 base times height. So we can estimate this dollar value. What we're really doing is we're taking the alcoholic's $11, plus this guy's $10, plus this guy's $9. We're just adding them all up. But kind of a shortcut method is if I know this endpoint up here is 32, then I can calculate that area. So for what we have on the board there, the equals 1/2 of base times height. And I guess I have enough numbers here. 1/2, since I made some up, 32 minus 20 is 12. Times the base of 160 units. So somebody with a calculator, we got 6 times, was it 860 or something like that? 1/2, 12 times 160, 6 times 160. 960, okay, what's going on? 960. So what that's saying is that from this little example we did, we're saying consumers have an aggregate value of $960 from engaging with this company and buying this beer, right? Because some people were willing to pay more. So it's kind of like the consumer's profit, right? We're adding up everybody's deal that they got. And so we know that the liquor store is probably profiting, Not necessarily. They might be profiting at the margin, but sometimes they might have to sell cases below cost or something to get by. But that's a different story we'll talk about later. But this is kind of like consumer profit. So let me just put this in as a teaser. We kind of introduce it in this chapter, but just where we're going with this in the future is, if I'm a business, I'd like to be able to sell this case of beer to this person for 24. Wouldn't it be nice if I could sell some of my cases for 20 and some of my cases for 24? Have you guys ever heard of businesses doing that, where they're charging different prices to different people for the same dang product? Yes, that's price discrimination. We're going to do that in 2 weeks. But that's why we look at this, is that we're thinking, as a business, there's kind of some money on the table potentially. And we're not screwing the customer over because they're not going to buy it. Remember, this is voluntary exchange, right? They won't buy our beer if they're not happy with our beer or our customer service or blah, blah, blah. So we're still just finding prices and trying to extract some of that consumer surplus to our bottom line. Okay, questions or comments there? All right, that's consumer surplus. Let's see, I think I had one other little thing to wrap up with this. Okay, yeah, so the last thing from this chapter before we move into the next is this state-even analysis. So last week we did break-even. How did we calculate the break-even? What was the formula for breaking even? The break-even quantity is what we introduced. You guys had some homework, maybe a test problem on that. What was the break-even quantity formula? This is the spot in the show where you can flip back in your notes and like, oh, what was that formula? What is it?
Fixed price over price minus marginal cost.
Okay, fixed cost. Okay. So the quantity that's going to break me even is I'm going to take my rent, my fixed cost, and then I'm going to divide it by price minus my marginal cost per unit, right? So I'm looking at my markup, and I'm saying, hey, if I got these gizmos marginal cost of $3 and I'm selling them for $5, every one I sell I make $2 on, right? And so if I sell 1,000 of them, I would have $2,000 in the cash register, and it just so happens my rent, all of my fixed costs is $2,000. So the bad news is I'm only breaking even if I sell 2,000, but it's a statistic that was kind of handy to say, how many units do I need to sell to pay my fixed cost? How much do I need to sell to pay my rent? So now this one is kind of related to that, but now that we're a little more sophisticated with our percentage changes, we're going to use that style, but it's kind of in the same vein. So we got the stay even. The stay even quantity. And so that is the stay even percentage change in quantity is equal to the percentage change in price divided by the percentage change in price plus the margin. That's kind of the simple way to write it. Okay, so for this formula, the way this textbook does it, the margin is like markup. The markup percentage. And so the word margin here that I'm using in the formula is price minus marginal cost divided by price. And we talked about this last time. I can't remember if they actually introduced the markup percentage. I don't think they did, but we're going to touch on it here, and then I think there's one other spot we do. This is a little bit weird. Like, if you mark up your price, if you're a normal human being, not a retailer, by the way, this would be something you do in marketing or accounting perhaps, or other industries if you're in the sales industry. When you talk about markup, you're using this formula. But to the average person, if I have $100 worth of cost and I'm selling it for $120, then I'm marking my product up by 20%, right? My cost is $100, I'm selling it for 120. It's like, oh, I have a margin, quote unquote, or markup of 20%. But that's not the way the industry does it. So it's the price minus the marginal cost, which of course ignores fixed cost, remember, right? So we got fixed cost being ignored here at the margin, but then we're dividing it by the same price. So it's a little bit different, but that's what this sucker is right here. So this formula, I didn't want to give you guys a big monster formula again, so I kind of did it in 2 steps for secret. All right, questions on that? All right, so let me give you an example. So suppose we had a 40% margin on our product and an increase in price, a percentage change in price equal to a positive 5%. So we're going to increase our price 5%. This is why this statistic is kind of nice to use, because it's a lot of stuff that companies know. I know my margin, and I know what I'm selling my price at. So what if I increase my price 5%, right? So what would I need to do to stay even? How many units would I need to sell to stay even? Because law of demand taught us if there's an increase in price, what happens to quantity of sales? It goes down. So that's kind of this whole thing's kind of tied into the elasticity stuff. So what do we got? Plug and chug. You got enough stuff here to plug and chug. What's the stay even quantity? No, you can just keep the numbers. Yep, makes it even easier. So what do we got? 0.111? And then change that to 100 to make it a percent. Yes, yes, if that's what you're asking, sorry. Yeah, so 5% over 5 plus 40 gives us 5 over 45, gives us 11.11%. And is it a negative sign or a positive sign? Negative, just because it's an increase in price, so law of demand says it's going to be down. So what this says, you guys are in the boardroom with your boss, the CEO is there, and they're saying, if we raise our price 5%, what can you tell me? And you're like, look, boss, I did the stay even analysis. Given our current margins, we would need to sell, let me phrase it this way, we can only lose 11.11% customers to stay even with what we were doing before. Right? We can only lose 11%. So now it gives us something to talk about. Well, do you think 5%, are people going to care about 5%, right? So an inelastic demand curve says, I bet if we raise 5%, we're only going to lose maybe 5% of the customers, right? Or whatever. You can kind of have a discussion, but what you're really discussing is elasticity at that point. But it kind of helps crunch the numbers a little bit better. All right, questions on that so far? All right, let's see if you can use your elasticity stuff. So this is example part 2. This is related to this problem. If the actual elasticity of demand is 2.5, should the company do the price increase? Should the company increase price by 5%? If the elasticity of demand is actually 2.5, maybe we learned this after the fact, maybe it's before the fact, but if it happened to be 2.5, would it be a good idea? How would we go about solving that? Luke kind of did it earlier. I think it was Luke. Jonathan?
No, you shouldn't.
No, you shouldn't. Why?
Because you'd be losing 12.5%.
Okay, So you used the elasticity formula to do this, right? So this is where you're going to use this in your homework or test potentially, is we've got the elasticity of demand. All the other stuff is a little less important, but knowing what goes on top and what goes on bottom is pretty handy. Because now we can plug and chug this stuff. We've got a 2.5 over here, which is technically negative, right? And we're thinking about the percentage change in quantity over the percentage change in price is a plus 5%. 5 times 2.5 is where you got the 12.5, right? So the actual percentage change in quantity is 5 times negative 2.5 equals 12.5%. So the answer is no. Don't do it. Now, I did this as a little bonus to this one, just to kind of show the connection between elasticities. This formula just says you're going to break even if you only lose 11%. Elasticities, now we were able to inform ourselves that we'd lose 12, and now we're back to the story of, yeah, it doesn't make sense to do it. We're not going to stay even. Okay, questions or comments there?
Russ, so to stay even, you have to lose only 11.11.
Yes, this would make you stay even.
Oh,
Yeah.
why do you multiply the 5 by the 2.5 and not change it to 0.05%? Since it's in percent, right?
You can do the 0.05, but then you're going to get 0.125. So as long as you're consistent, it doesn't matter.
Gotcha.
But you'll get the 0.125, but then you got to remember to switch it around.
Back. Gotcha.
Okay, yeah.
That makes intuitive sense too, because your elasticity value tells you how responsive something is. So just multiplying it by your percentage intuitively should give you how much. It's basically your magnifier.
Yeah. And there is one distinction here that I'm not even sure is worth saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that we are actually doing a profit analysis up here because we have the marginal cost part. There's my formula right here. So we are actually bringing in cost, whereas this was all on the revenue side. So the only reason I kind of married these two up is to say this does say what the quantity effect is, and this is also saying the quantity, but this is saying a little bit more. It's saying to stay even with profits, not just revenues, but profits will be staying even with that. So it's even a little bit more powerful because of that. Okay. So that wraps up this chapter 6. And now it's time to look at a couple other things. Chapter 7 is a little shorter. This one was kind of fire hose, right? Drinking from a fire hose type thing. By the way, a lot of what I gave you tonight is some background stuff that's beyond what the textbook gives you. So I'm hoping that now you'll go back into the textbook and things will make sense. Like when I said I suggested to maybe go to the Principles of Microeconomics textbook, I gave you at least some of that tonight so that you had a little more background going into the chapter 6. All right. So now we're going to look at the cost side a little bit. We talked about the shutdown. What was the idea of shutting down?
The short run or the long run?
Both. Well, shutdown is short run. Long run is going out of business.
Couldn't cover your variable costs?
Couldn't cover your variable costs, right? So that was the idea of shutting down. And so tonight what we want to look at is a little bit bigger on when are there situations where we can take advantage of more quantity, or maybe it's time to cut back on some. So we're going to look at, let's see, economies of scope and economies of scale. And I'm trying to remember. I'm going to do a little bit of PowerPoint here, but I wanted to do a little more board work before. So, all right, so let's start with economies of scale. this is chapter 7. Economies of Scale. All right, so we think of some of our big corporations, and why are they able to get stuff so cheap relative to maybe mom and pop Main Street in some circumstances?
The size.
Buying bulk,
Direct contracts.
so they have direct contracts with their suppliers, right? And so they're cutting deals with suppliers. Imagine somebody's in the business of making these gizmos again. Luckily, I got this prop here. I usually go out and pick somebody's something or other, but you know, they're normally selling 500 of these a month. Walmart comes along and says, "What can you do for me if I buy 15,000 this month?" Right? And so now the manufacturer says, "Well, shoot, I know that I could buy this wire instead of buying it at $3 a foot. I could get it for $1.50 a foot if I was going to make 15,000 units, right?" And so that's how it kind of trickles down into big being better. As we're going to learn, big being better doesn't always work out though, right? So it does depend on the nature of the product and possibly the production process. All right, so economies of scale, simply put, is that as you increase, you being a business now, as you increase the scale of production, and so from what we've been doing so far, that's an increase in Q, right? We're making more quantity. As you increase the scale of production, long run average total costs, LRATC, long run average total costs fall. If a company finds themselves where ramping up a whole bunch of production leads to some cost savings, we say that they're experiencing economies of scale. All right, so let's take a look at what that might look like. So let's draw a nice big graph for yourself, and let's imagine we've got a business with an average total cost curve, and they're a startup business. Give me a good that somebody would be making out of their garage. Maybe you guys have bought some of this. Somebody who hasn't given me example, somebody who hasn't talked tonight. You guys on the chat box, maybe you can give some stuff. Give me a good that you've maybe heard or maybe you could imagine. People kind of making it out of their house, out of their garage or something. What's that? Bracelets. Okay, good. So some sort of bracelets. And maybe it's kind of fancy. It's not just a simple bracelet. Maybe it even has some technology on it or whatever. But they come up with this new idea, and they're a startup company. So they're operating in their basement with or garage or basement. Let's stick with garage, I guess. They have a 2,000 square foot space. So the square foot of 2,000 square feet is what they have for fixed costs, right? Kind of bringing back this fixed cost, variable cost business. So at the minimum point, if they're producing 200 bracelets, that's where their costs are minimized, taking everything into account with bracelet production. All right, so now bracelets production has been going really good, and they find themselves making 250. Let's see where that is, 250. Now notice when they get the new orders in for bracelets, their average cost has gone up. So their average cost was $1.25 per bracelet when they were producing 200, but at 250, their costs have gone up to $1.40. Why did it go up?
Because all economies of scope. Or, yeah.
Nope, no, nothing to do with scope.
This economies of scale.
No.
Need more materials.
Need more materials. What else is going on with our feet? We've got variable costs, we need labor, we need fabric, we need metal, we need wires, because remember it's a high-tech bracelet of some sort, I'm not sure what it does, but we need materials. Those are all variable costs, right, per bracelet. But what's true about this production process in our garage, as we start to ramp up, we got some machines, of course, right? Some machines that are tying or fastening the bracelets and pounding the little rivets into the bracelet. What's happening here driving up our cost?
Electricity use.
Electricity might be more variable. What happened with rust in the grill? Rust number 1, rust number 2, rust number 5, rust number 10, rust number 15, rust number 30. The law of diminishing marginal product, the law of diminishing returns kicks in eventually, right? I don't know what that is with our bracelets. We're not telling the full story. But we do know that bracelets were minimized at 200, and as we start to ramp up, we still are in our 2,000 square foot space. We still have one machine that's been doing the work, but it's starting to wear out, and it only has a capacity of X amount per hour, right? So some of those factors are driving up our cost at the margin. I didn't draw the marginal cost curve in here, but that was the one that cut through the minimum. And now our average cost is rising. What do we need to do? If we see the future, I think we're going to continue to stay at 250, and we might even get up to 300. I think our little young company that we started, this new bracelet idea is really catching on. What do they need to do to adapt to an increasing growth of their company? Bigger space, another machine, some of the other things we're not talking about, some of that fixed cost. And so if we do that, we can lower our costs because we're at a more efficient spot. So by getting into a bigger spot, maybe anticipating some future growth, here's a 4,000 square foot space, and maybe we have some bigger machines and all of that. So in this bigger space and the additional machines, at 250, we're able to bring our price down to $1.20 even. Not only that, but when Christmas comes along, we're going to be prepared with those big orders, and when we bump up to 300, our average cost is going to come down again to $1.17. Yeah. Hi, this is Susie from Walmart. Have you heard of us? Yeah, we're a big retailer. Oh yeah, I've heard of you. Yeah. Well, we'd like to order 500,000 bracelets. We think that we can put these on an end cap and do real well. Okay, great, no problem. Click. Right. So now we have that was my voice. Silly. That wasn't my actual ring. All right, so we get the call from Walmart, and if we took that order in the short run, and it is an order of 400, in our current space, we're going to have higher costs. It still might be profitable to do it, bear in mind, right? We're not bringing in the revenue side. These bracelets are selling for $8 a piece, right? So this is somewhat, a deal. Now, do I want to go ahead and lease a bigger space right away if Walmart's a one-off deal? No. So if my business, on the other hand, is fluctuating between 400 and 200, when I get to 200 and all of a sudden we go into recession and there's another round of COVID or monkeypox or whatever, if quantity drops to 200, was it a smart move to the 4,000 square foot space? Hindsight 2020, no, not if my regular production levels are going to be 200, because at 200, If I'm in the green space, there's a lot of wasted space, right? So we're not efficiently utilizing our fixed costs, whether that be our machines or whether that be our square foot of our facility. We're not effectively using it. So these decisions are important, and you have to kind of hone in on whether it's going to work. Now, if Walmart says they're going to sign a contract for 5 years and we're going to always be at 400, now maybe we think about getting that other space. And if we do, knowing that 400 is going to be kind of our new magic number, we get into a 6,000 square foot space, and at a quantity of 400, we can bring our cost down to 112, and now we're making some good money. All right, so the moral of the story here is that I'm able to reduce my cost in the long run by building a bigger facility. And so don't do this on your papers, but there's an infinite number of buildings and machines that I could adapt to in the long run. There's one here, and 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 one here. And so as we start to efficiently choose the amount of square feet and the right amount of machines, what we've effectively mapped out is a long run average cost curve that is the outer envelope. The long run average total cost curve is downward sloping, reflecting bigger is better in terms of cost savings. So over this portion, over the long run, we have economies of scale. In the short run, it looks the way we did before because we're stuck in the building, or we're stuck with the amount of machines, or we're stuck with something, right? So the law of diminishing returns was, as you add more and more of a variable resource to at least one fixed resource, the amount of output from the variable resource increase eventually diminishes. And that gives rise to these costs going up. But in the long run, I can choose a new building, I can choose different things and move on. But we never want to maybe assume we were going to be at 400 when we're just starting out with our new business, right? Have you heard of people buying too much space or leasing too much space, or they might have jumped into something, a small business or otherwise. They thought, oh, we're going to sell 400. Whoopsie, I guess we're only at 250. Wouldn't it have been nice if we didn't commit to a 5-year lease at $1,000 a month when we needed half the space? And then now we got a lot more fixed costs. Okay, so that's economies of scale. Any questions there? All right, I just want to motivate this next one is that without, actually I can get rid of the stay even here. So some companies that get really big end up having this flatten out and then maybe even go up. So once we're at 400 and 800 and 1,000 units, we can't bring it down any further. This relationship doesn't go here. We eventually flatten out to where it doesn't matter if I make 400 or 800, I'm still gonna, my average cost, I'm doing the best I can, right? I've squeezed my suppliers as low as they can, or whatever the circumstances, that would flatten out. But we sometimes even say it up when companies get really big. Can you imagine what would be causing that? Think of some really big companies. Maybe even out of a university, but maybe not. What kind of constraints do real world companies run into when they get big? Jonathan?
Upper management.
Upper management, right? So basically, I started in our garage, and when I was running the place myself, I was kind of a jack of all trades and did everything. I had a few employees, but it was me and the employees in my garage making it. And then as I started to increase, I couldn't be there all the time, right? And so I hired a manager, and then I had to hire another manager, and then we had an upper manager and a lower manager, and I was the big boss. But for me to transmit a communication down to the front lines is much different in the 8,000 square foot facility versus the 2,000 square foot garage, right? I see something that needs to be changed. I'm the owner, I'm the boss, it's me and a couple guys. Hey, let's change it, right? That gets done now. You can respond, be nimble to the market, just like that. But when you're really big, that's a little more slow-moving bureaucracy and power struggles, principal agent problem, which is chapter 21 that we'll eventually get to. It's difficult to manage, and so sometimes our costs end up going up. So it's not always there, and we call that diseconomies of scale when that happens. Okay, our other economies is economies of scope. Scope economies. Economies of scope. So economies of scope brings in the idea of multiple products in a company. So economies of scope happens when the cost of, and I should say the average cost, and this is really longer than average cost. So the average cost of making multiple products is less than the cost of making those products individually. So there's an equation that usually equations are confusing, but I think in this particular case, especially, the equation's actually easier than thinking about the definition. And so the cost, if we look at a cost function of making good 1 and good 2 jointly, so this is the joint production at one facility, we're going to make good 1 and good 2, is less than the cost of making good 1 individually plus the cost of making good 2 individually. That's economies of scope. We put it all under one roof, and we're able to jointly produce the goods less than what we could do individually. So economies of scale was a single product concept, right? When I put Q, it was just like Q1 or Q2. As I produce more of that good, costs go down because of the relationship of the inputs, fixed costs and variable costs, making the right mix. Here it's joint production. Why do you think that would be? So let's kind of motivate this with why. Why would you think? Do you see quite a few companies with multiple products? Yeah. So why are they doing it?
They've established a wall name for themselves, so most likely people will buy similar products made by the company.
Okay, so it could be some name recognition. Let me get some people who haven't spoke yet. I know we're having a little trouble online. I see that the system's low, so I'm probably going to lay off you guys tonight. Samir.
Do they find information? Do they find information to specialize in some codes when they do that?
I mean, there could be information from the process, or is that what you mean?
I mean, I'm saying that once you release more codes, you can check which one works, which one doesn't, and then you can just develop the ones that actually works.
Oh, okay. But I think you want to kind of go beyond that too. But yes, I think you're touching on the right stuff. Give me a number between 7 and 14. 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Asia, what do you got to add to this?
Okay, wait, repeat your question again.
Why would companies find it cost effective to produce 2 products or more under one roof as opposed to having 2 standalone companies or buildings and basically all the resources making them? What do they share? Think about the cost. I mean, let's just use an example. What's a company that makes more than one product?
Are you talking like are you speaking like Apple? Like how
Yeah, let's use Apple. Let's use Apple. So Apple has the iPhone, Apple's got the MacBooks, Apple's got lots of stuff. So what would Apple be gaining by, let's just narrow it down to iPhone, iPad, and MacBooks. They're making all 3 of those. What are some areas that Apple's saving in by doing them jointly rather than having totally separate facilities making one for the iPhone, one for the iPad, and one for the MacBook? They're making them all under one roof somewhere. What are some of the costs?
Well, I don't know. I feel like since Apple's like a popular product, like instead of
Keep demand out of it. So this is purely cost, right? So when we think of it, and this is you're doing what's kind of normal, but that's what I'm trying to train out of you guys, is that we often want to blend these 2 things together. Sometimes we talk about revenue, which is what we've been doing tonight with total revenue and elasticities and all that stuff, price and quantity and demand and consumer surplus. This chapter here, this topic, is really honing in on total cost, and total cost was equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. What's in our fixed cost? We talked about stuff like rent and machines maybe in the short run. Variable costs might be labor and the plastic that goes into the iPhone and the computers and maybe some chips. Right? So everything needs a chip. So 1 chip per thing, those are variable costs. So tell me why they might find it beneficial. What are some things in the production process that allows them to enjoy some of these cost savings? Why does Apple make them all together? Hold on, I want Asia to respond.
I don't really have a response, so someone else is gonna have to jump in.
What does the labor structure look like at a manufacturing facility? It's labor. What does it look like at OU here? Who's at the top of the heap? Okay, we got the president. Who's under?
I don't know. Is there a vice president?
There could be vice presidents, and Regis is a kind of, the way we go. I'm just trying to give you a connection, and then keep going. Who else works here? I know you work here.
Yeah.
I work here. Who else helped us with the fans? Okay, some maintenance people, yeah. So think about the people working, and now if we put it into apples, we've got people on the manufacturing line. Obviously it's pretty highly automated, but somebody's got to be running the machine, pressing some buttons, looking at the manufacturing process. Of that labor mix, the CEO and some of the managers, and then you've got the operations people and the people sweeping the floor and cleaning the toilets, which one would we have some cost savings on by bringing the iPhone, the iPad, and the MacBook all under one umbrella? What are we kind of cost saving on a little bit? The president or the manufacturers that are actually pressing the buttons and assembling? Who do you think we're assembling that? So we're saving on those people's time. In what way?
Actually, I take back.
Okay.
So.
Good, I'm glad you took it back.
We're saving on the president's time.
Yeah. Or the president can effectively oversee the production levels of all 3 of those things, right? And can kind of make decisions like their time is probably being used more efficiently. If we were only manufacturing one thing, then that boss might be doing some other hats too, like small businesses do, right? When you run a small business, you're wearing multiple hats, but that might not be the most cost-effective thing to do for their time. And so we get that specialization thing kicking in that we did last time when we looked at the law of diminishing returns. We can have our labor force more specialized in that. That could go down to the manufacturing floor, by the way. So it could be that there's a boop, 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 boop for the iPad, and then for the iPhone, it's boop, 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 boop. But the same concept is there for one employee. And so that one employee can be kind of cross-trained to do the iPhone and the iPad. You guys with me on this? Right? I hope you're engaged on the concept here, because it's important that we can kind of see where those efficiencies might go. Companies can go the other direction. Ottawa University might be there right at the top. Can we have everybody do anything and be cross-trained to do everything? So sometimes we put too many hats on too many people at one time and spread people too thin to where they're not really operating at the effective levels that they could be if they were more specialized in one particular area. Those are the trade-offs. And so we don't always know the answer, but you have to be an astute manager and kind of be thinking about some economics to kind of make that decision. All right, now I saw a few more hands up, some other comments. Yes?
Well, the moment you mentioned like 3 different facilities, the first thing that came to my mind was operational expenses, but you didn't
Yeah.
mention that.
No, that's right. So now we can get back to the copy machine, right? So we got one copy machine instead of having 3 copy machines. And so a lot of the overhead expenses, there'll probably be some cost savings on. Anybody else? Yeah.
Oh, if you're a company that makes food, you could, if you have make fried food, your fryers could make multiple fried
Yeah.
food products.
Good. Yeah. So we got French fries, but now we can do jalapeno poppers or whatever, right? Because we have the fryer, we got the grease, we got all the machines, and maybe the demand is such that we're not running our fryer 24/7 with French fries only or something, right? And so now that makes sense. And so that's where it sometimes might not make sense later if it gets bigger enough. Understand?
Like, I think like their material use, they would use kind of the same materials for most products, and also like they would use older model iPhones and build newer models on top of those, so they don't have to like spend a lot of money on designing new products.
Yeah. So if there's material similarities, materials used are similar, now we could be back to the, hey, I can call up my material supplier and say, I used to order 500, what can you do for me if I order 1,500, right? And maybe there's some cost savings that way if there's sharing of resources across the board that way. Yeah?
Does that cover complementary goods?
I mean, that's all kind of rolled into this. It'd be like maybe complementary inputs. People that are skilled in one area, or machines, they know how to make the machines, those are complements? Or are you talking about complementary goods in the consumer sense?
Yeah.
It could be. But what I don't want to confuse with is with the complementary goods, the way we posted before is when totally on the consumption side, right? Peanut butter and jelly. If peanut butter prices go down, I don't buy as much jelly because I always use peanut butter and jelly together. So that's all consumer driven, right? Here, we're thinking about the cost of production and changing the production. I don't care if I sell these products or not. Does that make sense? I mean, I do care, but I'm saying for this analysis, all I'm looking at is that production process and the dollar cost associated with it. Okay, let me look online. I know it looks like system resources are low, so I don't know if I've been jumping around or not, but feel free to throw something up in the chat box if it is making sense or not. But I'll try to keep an eye on that, you guys. Okay, let's go to some PowerPoint.
Russ, is peanut butter and jelly a complement or substitute?
What do you think? Class? Complements. So remember, if they're used together. Now, are there some people like, I only eat jelly sandwiches or I only eat peanut butter sandwiches? For that particular consumer, they would be substitutes perhaps, right? So, but if I'm a seller of sandwiches or peanut butter and jelly, I don't care about the weirdo who only eats jelly sandwiches, or on some days that weirdo likes to eat peanut butter sandwiches. Do those weirdos exist? Yes. Am I trying to sell my product to weirdos only? No, because that's like 3 people that do it that way. You're going to lose money, right? There's not a big enough market to serve weirdos. Now, what's interesting though do the weirdos get served by serving the masses who generally like to use peanut butter and jelly together? Do the weirdos get served? Yes. That's the beauty of the market. That's where I get the tingle, right? Is that the market system serves the weirdos too, right? So if we define weirdoness by peanut butter and jelly only, or
So on
something
a quiz, if you answered either or, there would be, right?
I don't know. If you got a quiz question, see me after class. What do you mean either or? No, it wouldn't be, because you're looking at the market.
So it's compliments?
So it's complements. You use them together, peanut butter and jelly. Tennis balls and tennis rackets, complements or substitutes? Pepsi and Coke, complements or substitutes? All right. So we either use them together or we use them as alternatives. Let's see, Managerial Economics, Chapter 7. All right, here we go. Screen share. Oh, I see a chat. Let me see your chat first. Can I get some? Okay. Alright, well, let's see if this thing stayed with my settings the way I had them before. Are you guys seeing thumbs up? Oh, there it came. Never mind. I answered my own question. Okay. Alright, so here's just a recap of what we did earlier. So this kind of even goes in with a little bit of the economies of scale and diseconomies of scale as we increase complexity. We got different factors moving on.
Fixity.
Fixity,
At
yeah.
the really bottom of the upper.
The fixity of some factors. So how fixed is that factor? So if we talk about, I mentioned machines, right? As part of our bracelet production. How long will it take me to change the machine? You know, can I order it and it's got to be manufactured? It's a 6-month or 1-year deal, or can I jump on Amazon and buy one tomorrow and it's at my doorstep in 3 days? That's what I meant by the fixity of some of those resources. How fixed are they? Okay, anything else on that slide? All right, so there's our marginal cost curve. So diminishing returns kicks in where the increasing cost was. So this is some of what I did with you last week, just kind of a little review, but that's in this chapter because they're trying to motivate where these economies of scale and economies of scope might be coming from. Marginal cost curve cuts through the minimum point of the average cost. But does that happen all the way through? So this chapter looks at what they're calling learning curves, which is similar to the economies of scale concept. As we start to learn better our product, we can do it more effectively. You guys have all done this. First day of your job, how efficient and effective were you? First day when you started? Not very. 1 week later, starting to contribute, right? You kind of see how things are going. 1 month later. Are you there yet? Are you operating at the highest level of efficiency 1 month into it? Or do you still have some things to learn? Still probably got some things to learn, right? All right, so that's the idea of a learning curve, is that we can get more efficient as we're there longer. Well, what does that mean for the company? Well, when you are spending your 8-hour shift looking like a dummy, because you just don't know. You're not really dumb, but you just don't know. You're ignorant, right, of the process. Well, that was 8 times $20 an hour. That was a waste, right? I hope this person works out. How many of the bosses have said, whoa, they kind of were deer in the headlights. That was 8 times 20, and that was kind of expensive. 8 hours times $20 an hour. Well, that's out the window, right? So how did the cost of production look that day on your first shift? Well, they were pretty high. But as you started to learn the process, you were able to contribute more. And the same thing can be going on here with the number of units we're producing. So the author's using airplane manufacturing as an example, that when we don't sell a lot of units, if we have a big ticket item and we're doing really good if we sell 8 airplanes a year or something, right? Maybe that's a big deal because that's like $3 billion worth of airplanes. These are the fighter jets or something, right? So as we learn how to manufacture them, we can start to have some cost savings. And that's the idea of the learning curve. Okay, so if we graph the learning curve concept, the marginal cost curve does what we did with that J shape. It's just going down. But in the case of a large manufacturing item like the airplanes, that might be true over all relevant production levels. In other words, we never really get to the spot where the cost is going up because we only make a few of these things. So that's the idea of the learning curve. And maybe we can accelerate that and make things better. And that's ties into the economies of scale thing. All right, so here's guitar. Do I have any guitar players? Any guitar players? You play guitar a little bit? Okay, good. Jonathan, anybody online? Show of hands if you're a guitar player. Just curious. No guitar players. All right, no musicians. Any other instruments? What do you guys play? Let me hear them. Vivian, you were shaking your head? Drums. Cool. Anybody else? Because I do want to start a band. This is I got my PhD in economics as a backup for my lounge singing career. So I kind of like to do some crooner stuff. So it's still on my agenda to have that started. So I'm always on the lookout for band. All right, so Gibson guitars are pretty famous. So we've got different types of wood that goes into the guitar. So rosewood is used on budget guitars. Ebony is used for the high-end rock star guitars. However, the supply of ebony has changed over time. Brown streaks are seen as a blemish. So you don't have quite as a high-end, high-value guitar, but it's still better than rosewood. And so you are manufacturing these things. So the streaked ebony can be used for budget guitars, which is better than rosewood. So maybe it'd give you an edge on guitar sales by trying to come up with something a little different. So when we have a situation like this, some of our equations break down. They're too simple. So cost equals fixed cost plus variable cost, right? And so here, this is kind of one of the ways we characterize variable cost is just to take the marginal cost times the quantity, assuming marginal cost is fixed. So fixed cost, variable cost, and that might not work in the same way it did before when we have the introduction of multiple goods. So, what is the marginal cost of the streaked ebony for the mid-quality guitar? If you are Gibson, what is the marginal cost of the streaked ebony? If you followed this example all the way down. And raise your hand if you got any questions about the example. When the guitar manufacturer buys the wood, they just buy it in bulk, right? So some of it's streaked, some of it's not, carving it out of this bulk purchase. So in that case, what's the marginal cost of the streaked ebony?
0.
0. Why?
Because you've already paid for the ebony, and you just, high chance have strict ebony now that you're going to use in a different guitar.
All right. I don't know. Is that fair? So imagine we've got a cost of $10,000 worth of ebony. So marginal cost of ebony, the way we've been buying it in bulk, is $10,000 for a big old hunk of wood coming to the factory. And so Luke's saying it's 0. You guys agree? I'm not sure if I agree with him. Jonathan?
If the alternative is throwing it away because it's not good enough for the high end, then it would be 0.
Okay. So if we only are making high-end guitars and that's going to be thrown away, then that would be one thing. Is there an opportunity cost to throwing it away? What would it be? Do we have to make the guitars? We can sell it. So before we get into making mid-quality guitars, we might want to think of, well, what can we sell this streaked ebony for? Maybe somebody's making furniture or buttons for garments of some sort, right? So who knows? Go online and say, streaked ebony, how much? What's the market price? So we could probably come up with a market price of streaked ebony, and then that might be one alternative to getting rid of it as opposed to the garbage can. So then that might be possible, that there's some sort of exit there. Okay, so now keep talking here. So maybe it's not quite 0. Maybe it is. If it is garbage, then I tend to head towards Luke's thing as 0. It's probably pretty low. I don't know, ebony, streaked ebony buttons, what's the market for that? Who knows? But there might be some sort of price. So what would cause me to want to make some guitars with the streaked ebony?
Is a high demand for it?
Okay, so if there's a demand for it, what are some advantages I might have? Jonathan?
Cost to make it.
Okay, why? What about the cost to make it?
A little bit of ways to benefit of making it smaller.
So you've got the production methods, the infrastructure, the copy machines, other things that you're using to make the high-end guitar. Is there possibly some economies of scope? Probably, right? And so maybe with a very low cost there, but a good margin, maybe there is this market for mid-quality guitars. I'm already making guitars anyway. I've got these other things. Maybe we start to dabble with that. And what we want to not do, though, is to say the average cost of this is, what do we got? 2,000 guitars, $10,000 worth of ebony. Whoops, I think I went higher than I wanted to. 100, 200, whatever. Give me, it'd probably be a little more than 2,000. So 200 guitars. Maybe 80 of them are the high quality, 20 of them are the low quality. Would it be fair to just take that $10,000 number and divide it by 200? To take the average cost? Probably not. And that's what we're talking about, is that we wouldn't want to attribute the cost associated with the, and maybe I should say mid-quality, since that's what we got there, mid-quality guitar, of saying that it's just the average of the chunk. It might be more appropriate to use the opportunity cost of selling the streaked ebony as the cost of that guitar. And now we start doing the calculations. Does it make sense? I think we can sell these guitars at $1,200 a piece, and then we do all the rest of the math. But we want to appropriately assign the right marginal cost number when we make that decision. And so there's likely some economies of scale in there. All right, suppose a small family-owned company makes, sells, and distributes a popular breakfast sausage. Can this company realize economies of scope? So you kind of want to think single product, right? So mom and pop making their secret family recipe sausage. Can they potentially enjoy some economies of scope? Give me some examples of something. Somebody who hasn't talked yet, give me a shout. This is your chance if you've got it. Otherwise, I head to the random number generator. You want to go? I see your head shaking back there.
I was just thinking, could they distribute different varieties of sausage?
Yeah, give me a variety.
Like a spicy stuff.
A what?
Spicy.
Spicy, yeah. So we got one hot, I mean, that's economies of scope, just like that, right? Now, is that a trivial thing to do? Not necessarily. Have you guys looked at some manufacturing plants? I mean, it's amazing. You guys have certainly seen some here and there, but I don't know if you've visited some. It's really amazing the complexity of what they do. So in order to make spicy sausage instead of the secret family recipe sausage, what do you think would need to be done? Again, I don't expect you to perfectly know a sausage making thing, but talk to me what that looks like on a given day that the factory's open. What might we need to do? We got all these great machines, and we got these sausages being plumped out, and we're making 100,000 sausage links a day. We've got like a big deal. Well, what do you think would need to be done? Just imagine, use your imagination. What would be some of the things that need to be done to make the spicy versus the mom and pop?
Recipe change.
What's that, Jeremiah?
Recipe change.
Recipe has to be changed. That's one thing. So we got some ingredients. What else might need to be done with the ka-chunk? The machines need cleaning. That could be a big deal. It is a big deal. I went and visited when we went to Vermont with a student group. We visited the thing that we didn't get to do, Jonathan. We went to the maple factory, and they had it was super cool, by the way. So I'll show you some of the pictures, but Jonathan and I went with another group of students that during COVID, so we didn't get to do this visit, but they had this enormous vat that had all of the syrup from like 8,000 trees came into this thing, and it was like from me to through the door to that hallway. It was even bigger than that. So it was probably, let's call it 30 yards. I think it was around 30 yards and like probably 8 foot wide. Stainless steel, big, huge tub, and I could just imagine it full of maple syrup, right? And so she said, when we drain it out, I got to get in this thing and I have to hose it out and scrub it down. So she's in there. She was one of the small business owners. She's, kind of illustrating. She's scrubbing this thing down. You could just visualize her with some sort of cleaning supply and spending whatever, an hour, 2 hours cleaning, right? So there's stuff like that would need to be taken into account. So maybe that would work, maybe it wouldn't, but there's probably a good chance that changing, maybe we add some maple syrup to our sausages and we got the maple sausage, right? So certainly some possibilities. All right, so that's just what we put on the board before with the economies of scope. Can we do that by adding some varieties? Scope economies at Auto University. Scope economies at Auto University. What's our primary thing we do? Undergrad, education, pump them out, give them a degree, Russ McCullough, spewing out some econ, them taking notes, taking a test, and getting out of here. But what else do we make? Sports. We produce athletics, right? We have events. What else do we produce? A little louder? Master's degree, so graduate level work. That's a really good example, right? You guys doing this. We didn't always have master's degrees or graduate degrees. We're now adding the doctorate of business administration this fall. In fact, Jacob Michael, who was one of my first graduate assistants, he did the MBA and he's working for a company in Topeka, and they're paying for him to come back for his DBA. So he's going to be one of our first doctorate students in the program as well. So that's economies of scope, right? They got McCullough. McCullough can teach a master's class. McCullough can teach an undergraduate class. You know, we might be able to have some efficiencies that way. Uh-oh, I was afraid of that. Oh, well. I just lost my screen share. We're just gonna flip to, what are we gonna flip to? Good question.
Would online and brick and mortar be two, economies of scope?
Yes, absolutely. So online and brick and mortar is what Kim just said. What else do we produce at Ottawa University?
Business. Money for local businesses.
Different degrees, right? Businesses, business education, corporate education. So we're continuously trying to think of other ways to make more money for our nonprofit institution. But sometimes not as successfully as other times. All right, we got a few more things here. Just had to reschedule. You guys notice how I have to go on the fly all the time? All right. So, pet food company. 2,500 products, 200 different formulas. And how is that affecting things? Well, Walmart knocked on their door and wanted some stuff. And they needed to change up things and get away from offering so many varieties. Why? What about the same thing? What do you mean? Why? And here they're reducing. So they had 200, and now when Walmart knocked on their door, they actually had to back off on the varieties. What were they able to take advantage of with Walmart?
Specialization.
Specialization and economies of scale, right? So through specialization. So it was actually, now that they had the volume going with Walmart, it was a little bit of a trade-off that it was no longer profitable to do 200. The economies of scope kind of disappeared because we were able to do higher volume and take advantage of some economies of scale. This was their graphic. So runtime, setup time, cleaning the vats, cleaning the equipment, change. And so under the old product, they were always having to change for the varieties like we were motivating earlier with the sausage. And now they have lower cost doing it with the volume that they have. All right. So here's the learning curves little example. Double production, costs go down by 50%. So the first unit is 64, the second's 32, the third's 21, the fourth's 16. All right, so we have the learning curve thing. So this is actual average cost going down. On a potential project for 4 units, what is your break-even price? So the first unit cost you 64, second 32, 21, and 16. So to break even, how much if we, well, this is the first unit, literally cost you 64, but now we've got the learning curve thing, and then each one thereafter is going down. So we got 6, 12, 13, we got 7, 10, 13, 133, is that what you said? I thought you said 33 point something, but.
2.5, if you divide by 4, you're going to break.
Okay, I'm not dividing by 4 though, I want just the aggregate amount. So we can think about that being our cost structure, and then how much it would need to break even. So now, what if we get 2 more units? What is it to break even on an extra 2 units? The 5th and the 6th. How much money would I need if all of a sudden a different buyer calls up and says, hey, we need a couple more? 13, and 11, right? For those extra 2 units because you've learned from before. And so what this brings up is you've got some potential gravy on how to make some money for the next client. But might this client be mad if you did the 133 versus now the 24? Only if they knew, right? Now, you're going to sell it at a higher price than that anyway, but the point is you can start to make some money by pumping up the production and having these learning curves to take advantage of. So there's the break even. So here, like JC was doing, if that was the total cost of production, averaging it out between the 4, is that what you did divided by 4? Yeah, so 33. All right. Let's call it a night. You made it another round. Congratulations.